Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Jane Austen Literacy Foundation community. We have wrapped up Miss Austen. We had 4 amazing episodes to talk about, and now we are moving on to Sanditon conversation, which is going to take us a bit longer than 4 weeks, but it's going to be so much fun. I am joined by Marigold and Minnie tonight. My name is Melissa. We have across the board all different places of where we're at with our Sanditon reading experience. So that's going to be fun part of the conversation as well. Um, Minnie put together beautiful slides for us. She has a little bit of insider info to tell us about the scenes behind on those slides. That's going to be great. And Marigold, you just let us know that it was your first time reading Sanditon. So we said, don't tell us anymore so we can talk about it on here. I have to say there's so many gorgeous covers now and variations of Sanditon. I don't know if you guys have yours nearby. Oh yes, so you have a show-based one. Does yours say the now major emotion TV series on mine?
Yeah.
Yeah, so pretty. And then I think all three of us also have, yes, our gorgeous Sanditon, the world of Sanditon, as seen on Masterpiece PBS. So what we're going to do is talk through reading Sanditon tonight. It's short, so it's a great place for anybody to start. And then the next few weeks, we'll be talking through season 1 of the episodes, and then we'll do kind of a wrap up. And it's just going to be a fun summer project of making our way through Sanditon. I feel like we might want to watch and then come back to the text as well. And maybe some of our conversations that we have might be fun to play around with that and see what differences, how they played off of what little fragments that Jane Austen had left for us. So, all right, is everybody ready to get started on our conversation?
Ready.
All right, let's go ahead and, that is on me. Everybody close your eyes while we travel through time.
Rewind.
We are in episode 1 of Sanditon and what is happening this week in Jane Austen's life. In 1799, Jane Austen writes her sister from Bath. Flowers are very much worn and fruit is still more the thing. I love picturing the women walking down the street with fruit on their head, and just these clusters of random fruit sitting on top. I think I would lean more towards flowers. What do you guys think you would be wearing?
Well, this is kind of an interesting topic for me because a Regency book that I was a ghostwriter on, I wrote about a milliner who made the hats or the bonnets with the flowers and the fruit. So I actually did some research into how they made the fruit so that it looked as realistic as possible and what kinds of fruit they would put on the brims of the hat. So I love this topic. And even though I like the look of flowers better, I think it would have been fun to rock an apple or maybe some grapes or something. I think it would have been
Let
cool.
me see you with your beach hat. You're sitting there having like some fruit going all the way around.
Yeah.
And we all three love wearing hats. So I think one of our Sanditon conversations, we maybe need to show up with hats on and let's see what we all wear. That would be a lot of fun.
Absolutely.
I never read this quote without thinking of Lydia as well. And I just picture her like really paying attention to see what the trends are, what's being worn, what fashion plate she can get her hands on, or news from somebody coming through town so she knows what to pick apart and what to remake on her hats. All right. Before we get further, Mindy, I know it's a little bit, let's go back to slide 1 here so people can see it. Do you want to give us the behind the scenes insider information on our background?
Just real fast, this background, I try whenever possible to use real photographs. And this happens to be a photograph that my husband and I took when we did a cruise of the British Isles. So lovely friends, this is a real picture of the coastline. And my husband and I are just, hanging out, enjoying enjoying the British sea.
I feel like I can hear the wind when I look at this picture. It's just so gorgeous. All right, we're going to get into it first. Marigold, I want to ask you because this was your first reading of Sanditon, and to anyone else out there, if you read it, if you haven't, let us know your thoughts down in the comments. What did you think of this fragment of a novel from Jane Austen?
Well, it's always disappointing when it ends and you don't have a conclusion. So it was like, oh, come on. But it was very interesting. I think because I watched this series first, it was easier for me to remember the characters that way. So it was easy to follow along. But it was really good. I liked the writing. As always, she's just very clever and learning. I thought the seed bathing. Hopefully, we'll learn more about that later.
Absolutely. All right, Mindy, do you want to give us a rundown of some of these closer look points that we have for tonight?
Yes, I know there are quite a few, so I do apologize for any of you who like to read along. We'll try to kind of hit these plot points quickly, though. We begin with the overturned carriage, and as it overturns, Mr. Parker's foot is injured. In the distance, they see a cottage, and that is when Mr. Haywood appears, and he's very surprised that the Parkers, or their driver rather, tried to come down the narrow lane, because here in the village of Willingdon, people just don't do that. It wouldn't make sense to drive this hulking carriage where it doesn't belong. But Mr. and Mrs. Parker are very quick to explain that they've come here because they've seen an advertisement in the newspaper for a surgeon, and that is something or someone they would like to bring back with them to Sanditon.
Love it. I did highlight one passage. I have to get to my spot in the book here. About the cottage scene, because this kind of like stood out to me a little bit, and I want to hear your thoughts on this line. So it says, there, I fancy, lies my cure, pointing to a neat looking end of a cottage, which was seen romantically situated among wood on a high eminence of some little distance. And the word romantically situated really stood out to me. And I instantly had a visual. And I want to know, what is your visual when you hear romantically situated? Because that doesn't really give us, is it on a hill? Is it like, where is it sitting with romantically as a descriptor? But what comes to mind for you when you read that?
For me, it was the romantic poets. So I was thinking of people who Jane Austen would have read around that time, because she was writing this in 1817. So it would have been just before then. And so I was thinking of those poets that are referenced a little bit later, and how they were described as the romantics, right? And so everything was very devoted to nature. And so I guess that's what I was thinking,
Yeah.
a very natural surrounding for the cottage.
Miracles.
I was similar. I thought of the gardens because it's a cottage, so you think of it as this quaint little cottage with was it flowers and shrubs, and you can almost see like this haze, like this just I don't know, like the beautiful scenery around you, making that just quaint. So that's where I thought of it, that nature, and then cute.
Absolutely. I'm picturing like thatch roof, like Scottish Moors vibes, even though we're in England. Like, I just thought it really stood out to me that that one word instantly kind of brought this picture alive for me. And it felt reminiscent of Sense and Sensibility, because there's a lot of description around the cottage, and we don't often get descriptions of settings of house placement from Jane Austen and her other work. So that just jumped out at me as I was as I was reading through. Go ahead, Mindy, and take us on through the next one.
So, as referenced before, Mr. Parker is not about to give up, so he produces the newspaper clipping and shows it to Mr. Haywood, and the two gentlemen decide there's been a mistake. There is another Willingdon, apparently, in England, and the Parkers have come to the wrong one. So Mr. Haywood convinces the Parkers to come back to their cottage, where even though it seems like Mr. Parker's probably okay and he could get on the road soon, they decide to stay for a full fortnight.
Oh my goodness. I felt like I was so seen in that because I have zero sense of direction. So that would be me. And then this just happened with my parents. They were telling me a story. I was visiting them over the weekend, and they said went to meet up with their friends at a Mexican restaurant, and they were sitting there, and 15 minutes have gone by, and they're very punctual friends. We're not there yet, so they called, and they did not realize there was 3 restaurants from a chain, and one of them was at one location, and the others are at the other. So I feel like, as we often talk about Jane Austen being universal and across time, like we still have those moments of getting lost. And there's a second Willingdon that no one else thought to visit or check with ahead of time.
This is one of my favorite parts from early in the novel, how you pick out a quote, Melissa. I always think of the Haywoods and how they have 14 children, and for them, they never leave the cottage. They're perfectly content to be where they are. And so when Mr. and Mrs. Parker say, "Come back to Sanditon with us. We'd love to show you our home," the Haywoods are like, "No thanks, but you may take the eldest daughter, Charlotte Haywood, with them." And on her way to Sanditon, Mr. Parker does such a wonderful job of introducing a lot of the other characters that are going to be throughout the rest of the story, including Lady Denham, Sir Edward Denham, Miss Esther Denham, and Clara Brereton.
Was anyone else getting like shades of other stories throughout this piece here? Because the amount of children felt very Northanger Abbey, Catherine Morland to me. And then she was also very descriptive, I noticed, about how frequently they traveled and where they traveled. So she was like, he goes to London 2 times a year, and she visits the neighbors. That's about all the visiting that's happening. Was there any other of Austen's novels, Marigold, that this was reminding you? Or did you see like pieces of multiple ones, or did you feel it was standalone?
I wish I'd written it down because there was something further on, I think, that did really come up to me, but I don't remember. But yes, I think it was cute how you could kind of find her other stories in here.
Yes. We know, Mindy, that you will find us some Easter eggs before this is done, because you always find us the best little nods to other things. All right. And next one, we're still going here.
The Parkers are excited for the season, and I put the season in quotes because generally when we think of a Regency, particularly romance, we usually think of the London season. But so that would be mostly springtime, right? Mostly spring, early summer would be the London season. But in Sanditon, the season begins in July and runs through August, because that's when people are celebrating their summertime, right? So that is what we're seeing here, and they're so hopeful. They're so brimming with this hope that people will come to Sanditon to go sea bathing. The rest of the Parker family, then, which includes Diana, Susan, and Arthur, arrive, and they are just again brimming with enthusiasm because that's the Parker way, and they're hoping to welcome Mrs. Griffiths, the Miss Beauforts, there's 2 of them, and Miss Georgiana Lamb. And finally, Mr. Sidney Parker arrives.
It was really hard to focus on what you were saying on this slide with him staring in the corner. I was good, and then I caught my eye out of the sign there, and I was like, "Oh, Mindy, what did you set up for us there?"
He's looking at you.
That is the definition of a brooding gentleman right there.
This story, as Jane Austen wrote it, concludes with Charlotte spying Sir Edward and Clara Brereton together and wondering at the difficulties that lovers face when they try to have a secret rendezvous.
Her collar there, I love to look at the outfits, but that Elizabethan collar was like very much having a moment. I love looking at fashion and seeing how, so often now we're like, oh, it's 90s is back again or whatever trends. And like, they were doing the same thing. Like fashion has always been cyclical ever since we've had the ability to have clothing that's fashionable of a time. And it's interesting to see what was kind of trending at the moment. I know that's going to probably definitely be a topic we'll be talking about throughout these seasons, because the clothing is so much fun.
And it's gorgeous in this series.
It
Yes.
is. It is. Marigold, do you want to give us our first character here that we're going to meet up with?
Or meet the characters as described by Jane Austen. Mr. Tom Parker, age 35, open hearted, enthusiastic on the subject of Sanditon, very enthusiastic, has more imagination than judgment, true, and is a family man.
He is very passionate about Sanditon. I think there's a sentence in that describes it as his wife or his wife and children. There's
Yes.
some wording in there about how passionate he was about it. He's going to be a fun character to watch as we go through the season, but I do think he's kind of that. And there's some moments when you love him so much, and some moments where you just want to smack him upside the head and be like, "Come on, Tom, what are you doing here?" And he even gave us some medical advice, which we'll leave here that you can read, and we'll take a little moment for discussion. Did you notice any moments throughout as you were reading that really stood out to you as like Jane moments in the text? Did you feel like she had a lot that she was going to go back and revise? What did you feel like the state of where it's at, where we have it at?
I I feel like there probably would have been revisions, but I think that these characters had probably been stewing in her imagination for a dozen years. Because if you go back and look at her timeline, she lived in Bath, and then the family went to Lyme Regis, and then they went to Southampton. So she was all over these seaside towns, and she didn't write during those years. And people, they comment on that, right? Still today, where it's like we don't even have letters from some of those years. And so I really think that someone like Mr. Tom Parker existed in her imagination for a very long time. And by the time she had the opportunity to start writing him, like this right here, this big long diatribe about how the sea is a cure-all, I think she'd probably heard that a million times and then was able to turn it into something this character would say.
Absolutely. Marigold, how did you feel reading it for the first time about that?
I was going to say that similar because it really amazes me that we don't have like journals, right, from her that she had like these descriptions or notes about her books of how she kept track of the characters. So she just developed them as she wrote. So there, as Mindy said, they're in her head, which amazes me because like if I'm writing something, I make notes on everything. I have notebooks for character ideas or plot ideas, and so I don't forget. So the imagination she must have had must just have been incredible in the memory to keep these and develop them. And they were very developed because while I was reading it, I could picture the characters in the show. So it wasn't like this, oh, this how did they come from this character to the show? It doesn't match. They match exactly. So they were already so well developed that they didn't have much to embellish or make more of because it was already so well done.
Absolutely. There's really shades of Austen throughout, and I went to see if I can find. Yeah, so the first sentence of chapter 3 reminded me of our iconic opening sentence of Pride and Prejudice, but just such a punchy sentence right off the bat. So, chapter three's first line is every neighborhood should have a great lady. I I love how it just is like that lets you know where she's going to go with this right from that. And then, of course, it says the great lady of Sanditon was Lady Denham. And then we go on from there. But I don't know why I was looking at the first lines of each one of the chapters. And so she starts with a question and others are, very different. I did feel like the first line of chapter 1 is very long for one of her opening sentences. But that first chapter really has some compound sentences going on that make it interesting to see if maybe she would have fleshed them out a little bit or did it pack everything that she wanted into it. I think that could be one of the challenges for people when they go back to read Austen or when they're reading it for the first time if they're not used to reading the classics. Those long sentences like Dickens and some of the others can feel a little bit overwhelming. But if you just, I find, take your time reading it and kind of read a couple sentences and then let it digest and look back on what you're reading and then kind of think it through. It might take you longer to get through the book, but we're not racing here. We're trying to understand the story and what's going on. So, and then as you said, Marigold, it does make it easier when we're able to play off of a show or something, which why I think it's great to there's no shame in like watching a classic and then reading it because it does help you know who the characters are and where they're going and what's happening with them. All right, we have our next character, Mrs. Mary Parker, who I just adore. She is genial, affable, kind, good for Mr. Parker because she brings him back down to earth. Not great at giving advice though, so she does have that going for her. But she's a lovely woman. I think we all enjoy her in the rewatch as well. Mindy, give us our Miss Haywood introduction.
This is Miss Charlotte Haywood, one of 14 children, as we've already mentioned. She's the eldest daughter, so there are other males in her family, but she's the eldest daughter at age 22, particularly useful and obliging, which I thought was such a great recommendation for her. And she is trusted to purchase items for her siblings, which I know kind of sounds a little, I think, frivolous and silly, but I think of how this family would have given her money, would have given her permission to charge, perhaps. And then, of course, she is trusted to know the tastes of all of her siblings and purchase things that they would like or maybe find useful. So I think that says a lot about how much they trust her. And then I think Charlotte, perhaps being a little bit like Jane Austen herself, especially in these first 11 chapters, she adopts the role of the observer because she's very, very much watching everyone else around her and trying to form opinions about who they are and what to make of them.
I love it. It's going to be fun to see her again because it's been a while since I watched the show. And I know looking at this picture, it's one of those controversial subjects when we watch either Regency adaptations, Jane Austen adaptations in particular, is the hair up, hair down, all about the hair. I feel like we were talking about in our previous conversation we had a few weeks ago about adaptations and the directors, producers kind of taking on their interpretation of a story. I feel like rather than being so strict to that, should the hair be up or down, if we look at it as a representation of the character maturing, that's what they're signaling to us. It's at least in my opinion. Let me know how you guys feel about it, but I don't think it's so structured as to at this age the hair should be up or down. It's a representation of where the character is at, like emotionally, maturation, like all that comes into play.
I agree with you 100%. And I also think, especially in this particular adaptation, because they are by the sea at a vacation spot, having a holiday for someone like Charlotte. I think that hair down shows it's the cliche, right? Let your hair down.
Right.
I think that they maybe played into that a little bit.
Absolutely.
I also think it had because she's so young. So it's just had that youthful look. I think a lot of the times when they do, as you said, depending on where they are in the characters, sometimes they'll put it up. Or if someone is more uptight or strict or a serious character, and then as they change throughout the story, you can see how the hair comes down and that the mannerisms will change. So I feel like this one is more of she's young, she's carefree.
That is a perfect one. I'm assuming you both have watched Anne of Green Gables, the Megan Fallows version. There, no? Oh my goodness, we have to watch that together. Oh, that how can you both not have seen it? We are gonna fix that. Maybe you can go with me on this. But there is the I can't think of her name, the head mistress of the school that she's teaching at.
Oh, I
You know,
can't
you
think
know
of
who I
her.
mean. But her hair is so severely slicked back, and as she softens and she has a friendship with Anne, we start to see kind of a Gibson girl style to her hair, and it's a little bit. It's still pulled back, but it's loosening, and she's like soft as she's softening as a character. So Marigold, I think you nailed that. Like it really can let us know where the character is at. the tight hair versus the loosening of it is so important cues visually for us to be picking up on without even realizing it.
Well, and
Absolutely.
in this time period, it was so traditional for the married woman to wear
Mhm.
her hair covered, right? She had to wear a cap day, night, whatever. But especially in this adaptation, we don't really see that as much.
Yeah.
The ladies are more carefree with how they're wearing their coiffures, whether they're married, unmarried, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. And sometimes I think it's like important to allow to adapt to what a modern audience like would want to see as well. I mean, we do love seeing the hairstyles and all that. And if everyone's covered up all the time, it wouldn't be as fun. Let's have a little fun.
I was gonna say, I think we're already still doing it. The two of you married ladies have it up, and I'm still.
Ah, we have Lady Denim. Mindy, give us Lady Denim.
She's another one of my favorites. As you mentioned, Melissa, I actually put that in here that she's the Great Lady of Sanditon. And she's 70 years old. And Jane Austen really took some time to develop her personal chronology as far as her marriages were concerned. Because when we talk about things like age gap romance, her first husband, Mr. Hollis, she married him when she was 30, but he was 70 at the time. So now we're seeing her 70 and she's buried two husbands. And that really has formed who she is. She is self important. She has a good and active mind, and she and Mr. Parker see things differently. Those are all according to Mr. Parker when he's telling Charlotte about Lady Denham. But then once Charlotte meets her, she calls her mean. She actually uses that word several times. She says she's thoroughly mean, and she makes people around her mean. And of course, me being the word nerd I am, I try to look at the several meanings of the word mean, right? So when we think of the word mean, what's the first one that comes to mind, ladies?
Fully.
Yeah. But also, if you think of being of a mean level, right? So she's kind of bringing down everyone around her to almost that pinch penny, right? She
Mm,
keeps everything at a mean status, and she's the one who's very concerned about making money in this venture.
that's a great way to look at her character. I feel like she would be best friends with Lady Catherine. They would get along famously. They could spend a whole afternoon of tea just gossiping away about how horrible everyone else is and all the wrong they do to them. I'd love to see the two of them in a room. There is a scene as well when Charlotte, I can't remember if it's the first time she goes to meet her, and she's talking about that Lady Denham hasn't entered the room yet, so she has a little bit of time to look around, and that her first husband has been reduced. His painting is like in the side of the room, and her second husband has like the prime spot over the, I think is at the fireplace or over the mantle area. I thought that was like, it felt like a bit of Jane coming through and like maybe her observations of standing in somebody's house and maybe they had something similar. And so she wrote that into the scene of like, it felt so specific. Like she had to have seen it somewhere in order to put that
Mhm.
in there.
I agree.
Absolutely.
All right. Miracle, do you want to give us Miss Claire? How do you say the
Brereton.
Brereton?
Brereton lives with Lady Denham, loves lovely and gentle, has the affection and respect of most everyone, a general favorite, has been with Lady D longer than 6 months, and the perfect heroine. And in the show has beautiful clothing.
Yes. I was just going to say, she has that soft and lovely look about her. She is so pretty.
In the I know I've talked about this book version before, but
Mhm.
this one is written by Kate Riordan, and it's not the script of Sanditon, the adaptation, but it basically is. It's a novelization of the script. And so when they introduce Clara Brereton and then throughout the rest of this novel, every time they talk about her, they describe her as being doll-like.
Ah,
And I think that's such a perfect adjective to use, that she's doll-like. And I think it kind of harkens back to where Charlotte, even after meeting her, she thinks of her as the perfect heroine because she has this gentle sort of beauty, but she also has an incredibly tragic backstory as well. And, Melissa, you're asking, do we see any moments that remind us of other Jane novels? I feel like when Clara is described, she's so much like Catherine, so much like the people that Catherine Morland wishes she was like, right?
yeah,
Where Catherine Morland is not the perfect heroine, but she wishes she were like those tragic figures. And so we have someone like Miss Brereton, who is a very tragic figure.
absolutely. She looks like a young Nicole Kidman to me when I first
Mhm.
take like a glance at her. I
Mhm.
could see her playing that part, but again, like that, yeah, that perfect kind of look. We better get moving because we could spend forever talking through these characters. I'm looking at our time. So we have Sir Edward Denham, Baronet from Denham Park, wishes to be seductive, agreeable, and handsome, has a pleasing voice, but speaks with nonsensical sentiments and sensibilities. I feel like we've seen other characters like that in Austen for sure. They're a little bit better opinion of themselves than we have. Um, Mindy, why don't you give us this one? And I'll bounce up to you, Marigold, for the next one.
Miss Esther Denham lives with her brother. She pushes Lady Denham to invite them to stay at Sanditon House, and she's civil but cold. And she's one of my favorites too.
I feel like they could do well in Mansfield Park.
Yes.
The brother and sister there.
Absolutely.
All right.
And was it young or old Anne Young Stringer, mentioned briefly in connection with the gardens at Sanditon House?
He looks very sure of himself in that pose. But here's a letter from one of my sisters. They never fail me. Women are the only correspondents to be depended on. Mr. Parker in chapter 5. Mindy.
Miss Diana Parker, she's so delicate, she can have no profession and is sure that going to Sanditon will be the death of her. She's age 34. But as we know, she does go to Sanditon because she wishes to serve others and be useful. And I love so many things about the way Jane Austen describes her character that do not exist in the adaptation. So I cannot wait until we watch those first couple episodes and we're able to talk more about Miss Diana Parker.
Yes.
Absolutely, because I don't remember her as much from the show. So it's pretty interesting.
Mindy, go ahead and give us the rest of her.
So Susan Parker, there is no, as everyone knows, she's not in the adaptation. So that's why we don't have a picture of her here. But she is perhaps a little bit more delicate than her sister Diana. She had leeches of pride recently, had 3 teeth extracted all in one day. And even though there doesn't really seem to be anything wrong with her, she carries both salts and drops. And Charlotte, as our observer, tells us, the reader, that seems a little excessive because she like keeps sniffing them, but there doesn't seem to be anything wrong with her.
She is just not having a good day. 3 teeth. Oh my goodness, that just sounds horrible. Marigold, give us Mr. Parker.
Mr. Arthur Parker, languid? I
Mhm.
can, okay. Eager mind in want of employment, proud of himself for making a good fire, cannot stand the damp air, enjoys wine, cocoa, and toast. And he makes a perfect toast.
And he does enjoy his cocoa, and he's in the wrong place if he doesn't like the damn bear. He should not be this guy. Mindy, go ahead.
We have Miss Georgiana Lamb. She's age 17, so she is the youngest character as far as we know age-wise in the Austen's writing here. She has very delicate health and she has a massive fortune. She's from the West Indies. She travels with Mrs. Griffiths and the Miss Beauforts. And she, according to Lady Denham, is the answer to her prayers because this is precisely the sort of young lady she's hoping to engage to her to Sir Edward.
Of course. And that just looks like a painting with her profile there and her hat and the seaside. It's just perfection.
I know, it looks like she's really there.
It does.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Perfect.
Dun, dun, dun.
All right. We have the Mr. Sidney Parker, friendly and amiable, polite but short conversation, kind to Mary, little Mary, and even bows to Charlotte. 27 to 28 years old, very good looking and fashionable, drives the carriage alongside his servant. So that gives us a little insight into his character. We won't get too attached though. It's okay.
Wow.
Well, I wanted to make sure to point out there for everybody who hasn't read it but maybe has already watched it, that when he does first meet Charlotte, he is amiable and he is polite to her, because that's not what we see in the adaptation.
Yeah.
So
They try to suck us in with a brooding gentleman every time, and it works.
it works.
All right, we have a few extra tidbits for you to check over here. Marigold, let's do a quick while everyone's checking out the extra tidbits. Question for you as a first-time reader. Did you feel like it was complimentary to having already watched the TV adaptation? That it was close enough that you could see where they were going and that they didn't completely create these new characters and their character qualities out of thin air? How did you feel about the two together?
Well, I think it was funny how it's been a long time because I saw the show when it was live on air, so it's been quite a while. But it was interesting that the descriptions were so well carried over that I knew who they were. So they really kept with the characteristics of the characters enough that I could remember and match it up with who it was. So it was very good. Yeah, just the reading was great.
And that's something we often talk about with Jane Austen fan fiction, and Mindy, with you writing Jane Austen fan fiction, that we want to see the characters in new settings. And obviously with this, it was create the setting for these characters. But the essence of fan fiction is kind of keeping their character qualities and then just either amplifying them or putting them in new situations to play off of that. It's not reinventing the character, because the reason we love them is because they're Austen characters. So, do you feel with a rewatch for you, Mindy, that you're going to love the same characters and that they're going to hold true for you?
Well, I'm laughing because as I think I've mentioned on here before, I've already watched this so many times.
Rewatch for the how manyth time. We wouldn't say how many, but a rewatch of a rewatch of another rewatch.
I have mad love for all of these characters in season one. It's because I've watched season one several times. It's seasons 2 and 3 that will really be a different viewing experience for me because I've only watched them one time each. So I think that I will continue to love the season one, and then I'll have some exciting new comments for you in seasons 2 and 3.
And 2 and 3 we have to take as just an homage to Jane Austen, because they're not taking it from any of her writings. So we will give them leeway for the story there. And we have a few extra tidbits that Mindy pulled out for us that starts in the month of June. A few things about Mary there, as we love Mary. The Beaufort sisters and Jane Austen started writing Sanditon in January of 1817, but passed away on July 18th of 1817. Did I say January? I might have said January the first time. January 1817, but passed away in July 1817 before completing this work. So she didn't get very far in this one, and obviously she was probably in much different spirits writing it than she was with some of her other novels, but we clearly still see her brilliance of her character development shining through in this. And Mindy, since you have been over to where we're sharing, would you like to give us this one?
I just thought it was important because unlike some of the other works by Jane Austen, a lot of times we're guessing where these places are in England, or they might be fictional even. And so Sanditon, even though it is fictional, Jane Austen does tell us it is along the coast of Sussex. So this picture comes to us from along the coast of Sussex. And then we have, it's a modern day photo, obviously, but we do have the cliffs there as well. So I think it does sort of give everyone a better idea of what Sanditon looked like.
Absolutely.
I
And
just
the
have one
best travel agent was Tom Parker with his beloved descriptions of it. Go ahead, Marigold. Sorry.
I've always wondered, like, if she went to Bath during her life, and I wondered if she thought maybe this was like a setting that was like her experience in Bath, whereas they had the baths that were healing. You'd go and drink the water, or you'd go bathe in them for that healing. So I wonder if she had spent that time in Bath, even though she didn't really write, she took that information and created this in her head of the healing powers of the water and the
Mhm.
bathing. So I always wondered if that was like where her mind went, and very interesting.
It was like everything was made better with water in some form or another, whether you're breathing it in or you're drinking it, the
I
water.
could see that. Going to the ocean always makes you feel better.
Just a vacation. They just needed a vacation. That's all. All right. And then we made it through all of our characters, which was so much fun to see. I forgot how many characters we had in such a short amount of time. She really introduced everybody to us early on in the book. Speaking of characters, we have our Longbourn reading. So there's a little bit of time still for everybody to get their reading finished up, but join us for a group discussion on Saturday, June 14th at 3 p.m. EST. There will be more communications going out on that in the Patreon community. So there will be a link in the description box below if you haven't joined us yet. Just join as a friend of the foundation, and then you will get your Zoom link on time, more notes about that. And I think this one's going to be a really interesting discussion surrounding it. And I know it's been kind of a reread for some people and a first time read. For the month of June, we are reading Austenland. This one is really fun. I have to get started on this one. And I know, Mindy, you already finished. You did audio, was it, for this one?
Yes, audiobook. And it's a very good version. So anybody who's an audiobook listener, I think you'd enjoy it.
Perfect. Marigold, do you have your copy yet?
I do have a copy. I listened to it last year, so I'm going to reread it or listen to it this year.
Awesome.
I'll
And
be right.
I have watched the movie, like you, Mindy, with Sanditon several times, but I have never read it. So I'm really looking forward to reading it and comparing the two. And we will definitely be doing a watch party with Austenland as well. So if anyone wants to be following along with us, go ahead and watch the first 4 episodes of Sanditon season 1, and we will be discussing that next week. So you can jump into the comments and join us. I think over in the Patreon community, I might go ahead and open up a chat over there as well, so we can be chatting along with anyone that would like to discuss as we go. But it is going to be really enjoyable to just settle into the series and like take a deeper dive with it. And it's been a while, I know, for all of us since we've seen it. So let's enjoy these characters, get to know them a little bit better, and talk about our opinions as if we were Lady Catherine or Lady Danbury. We can express them as we see fit. All right, did we catch everybody up on everything? Was that a wrap for all our announcements?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay. We made it through. We've met all the characters. We will get to TV watching in the next week and join you all for those first 4 episodes. So until then, everyone have a wonderful week of reading, of watching Sanditon. We will see you again soon. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button. We are getting very close to 1,000 subscribers, which is super exciting. Also hit the like button and leave a comment. That also helps us as well. Until next time, we will see you again soon. Take care. Bye.